Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. Punishment for crime historically has been rooted in revenge, retribution, and the widespread use of torture, corporal and capital punishment. The idea that punishment should take away a person's freedom through incarceration in a prison is a relatively recent and uniquely American invention. Reform-minded thinkers and progressive religious groups like the Quakers in the early 1800s felt that a more humane option would be to place all convicts in public works projects, such as building roads, forts, and mines. Prisoners were expected to work hard, wear prison uniforms, prohibited from talking while eating and working together, and placed in solitary confinement with nothing but the New Testament to read, to contemplate their wrongs and sins until authorities decided they had exhibited true repentance and a change of heart. Although revolutionary for its time, the results were disheartening. Tens of thousands of inmates went stark raving mad. The penitentiary had become the torture chamber to elicit penitence from its victims. The destruction of countless number of individual lives and the chaos and brutality that mass incarceration has brought to American life has led Angela Davis to liken abolishing the prison system to the end of slavery. Today's guest on the Radical Imagination today is Stanley Howard, a formerly incarcerated death row inmate who won and was exonerated and pardoned by former Illinois Governor George Ryan in 2023. He was arrested at the age of 21 in 1984 and tortured into signing a false, coerced confession carried out by Chicago police under the command of Chicago Police Commissioner John Borg. As part of the Death Row 10 and the Borg torture scandal, Stanley stopped his own execution for a crime he didn't commit by educating himself and becoming a jailhouse lawyer who helped other death row inmates with their legal battles. He authored a book entitled Tortured by Blue, the Chicago Police Torture Story, and is working on a second one called How an Innocent Man Was Sentenced to Death. We welcome Stanley to the Radical Imagination on his recent November 2nd, 2023 release from prison after serving 39 years. He clearly is a social justice advocate on a mission and puts a human face on our dysfunctional and failed criminal justice mass incarceration system. Stanley, welcome. You're nodding your head. It is a real honor to have you on the show. Thank you so very much for being here. And congratulations on your release. I don't know if that's quite the word, but because you should have never been in there in the first place, but you're out now, and it's just an honor and a pleasure to see you and meet you and dialogue with you. We've had contact in the past, but this is the first time we've actually met.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And yes, I believe congratulations is in order because I worked long and hard for this release, and I prayed for this day. Many people have helped me with this, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Well, tell our audience, I wasn't able to really get into the case that much in the introduction, but please help our audience understand the circumstances under which you got arrested at 21 years old and the unfairness of the system to rectify that initial injustice.
Well, on November the 1st of 1984, I was arrested wrongfully for the armed robbery of two on-duty Chicago police officers. When I left the police station, I had 6, 7 other cases that I did not commit. At that police station on November 2nd, I was literally tortured and a confession to a murder I knew absolutely nothing about. When I say torture, I mean at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 detectives came and got me out of the precinct lockup, which was downstairs in the basement. Took me upstairs to an interview room, handcuffed my hands behind my back, and took that set of handcuffs and handcuffed it to a handcuff that was on the ring on the wall. So I was basically sitting on a bench with my hands behind my back and stuck to a wall. And these 2 guys went to feeding me information about this murder. I knew absolutely nothing about this crime, but they kept feeding me tidbits about this murder. Then they asked me, did I want to sign a confession to this murder? I said no. I knew nothing about this case. James Latito, the detective, slapped me across the face. Now, mind you, I'm 21 years old in this interview room with 2 white detectives, and I'm literally scared half to death after he slapped me. Yeah. At first, I thought it was just going to be procedures as usual. But when he slapped me, I knew I was in danger. After that, he asked me, was I going to sign this confession? I said no. And both these cats beat the living hell out of me. The sergeant who we walked past, John Byrne, was in the office area when we walked past him going to the interview room. He joined these 2 cats. Nobody else is up on this 3rd floor, or on the 2nd floor when this occurred. They beat me, kicked me, and slapped me so much that I was about to give in then. But James Latito went and got this plastic bag. And he placed this plastic bag over my head and took his hand and tried to suffocate me with this bag. And I was wiggling about. Yeah. And the bag had a huge hole in it. So he went into the office area and came back with this huge typewriter cover. Mention the typewriter these days is like a dinosaur, but back then, the typewriters had huge covers. And he put my head on one end of the cover and wrapped the rest of it around my head. And he came on the back of me and he took his hand and he jaked me in the air. And when he jaked me in the air, the handcuffs literally dug into my wrist, where you can still see the scars today where the handcuffs dug into my wrist. And he literally knocked me out. I thought he was trying to kill me, because when he started suffocating me with the plastic bag, the other 2 detectives was punching me in my exposed midsection, and I couldn't get away.
And obviously, you asked for a lawyer. You had enough, consciousness to ask for a lawyer, but of course that was refused.
I kept asking for an attorney. I was asking for an attorney the first day I was locked up.
Yeah.
I called my mom and asked my mom for some help to let her know that I was here incarcerated on this police armed robbery case. But I didn't know that I was going to end up, well, when I woke up, James Latito was slapping me, asking me if I was going to sign a confession. I said no. The beating continued. One of the cops continued to kick me in my shin, whereas I still have scars on my shin today, where you can see. And when he approached me with this plastic bag again, I agreed to sign at that time. Yeah. And this state's attorney, by the name of Denise O'Malley, she knew when she came into that interview room to take this confession that I was not in the same condition and state of mind that I was in on the first day that she saw me. Yeah. But she was so keen on getting this confession, nothing else mattered. So when I signed this confession, I tell you, it was like a circus that entered town where they was high-fiving each other, laughing and joking because they got their prize confession. And they knew that they was going to be able to use that to convict me of this crime.
There's so many people that knew about this in a sense, and yet wouldn't do the right thing. They were all part of a system that kept them continuing this barbarity. And it reminds me, what you're talking about reminds me of the Central Park 5 case, similar circumstances there as well. So what happens next? What happens next with you?
The extraordinary part about this is that my stepdad, after I called him later that night or that morning of the 3rd and told him what happened, he come running to the police station. They refused to let him see me. So he went down to headquarters to file a complaint. And he felt bad because he was calling the police on the police. So he filed the FBI complaint also. 2 years later, in January of '87, I was watching TV while I was in the county jail. I was playing chess, and I had the TV to the back of me. And I heard this guy by the name of Madison Hobley, who was accused of setting a fire that killed 7 people. When the reporter, Chuck Gowdy, asked him, why did he do it? He said he didn't do it. And Chuck Gowdy said, wait a minute, you signed a confession. He said, I didn't sign a confession. They put a plastic bag over my head. So when I turned around and looked, the same 2 cops that did me, well, one of them had Madison Hobley by the arms. And I called the FBI the next day and I said, wait a minute, I got another guy making the same complaint. And I was told that the Department of Justice decided not to prosecute. It wasn't until after I got to death row that I realized that I was part of this massive scandal that had been going on since 1973. And eventually, it was 12 of us that was on death row about these same cops. And some of these guys had literally been electrically shocked with a hand-powered generator where John Burns learned how to shock people while he was in Vietnam, working as an MP, trying to get information from the Vietnamese. Anyway, they used the electric power generator, a cattle prod, and Russian roulette, and beatings to get these confessions. Now, the state's attorney's office knew what was going on because they was fighting these claims against these same cops year after year after year. Now, they had to have been to know because in some of these cases, they was fighting different cases in different courtrooms about the same cops. Even the public defender's office knew because there was whispers about, if there was a confession and there was some electric shock or plastic bag or Russian roulette involved, that must be a Area 2 John Burns case. But in the end, it was almost like 180-something plus Black men tortured over a long period of time, which was substantiated by special prosecutors that was formed.
And the judge hearing your case was a former police officer, correct?
Yes.
And as well as your court-appointed attorney.
Yes.
Had been an ex-police officer in the same area.
Yes.
Where you had been tortured. The same. So it was unbelievable.
Not only that, Jim. My Judge Mannion, he knew the cop that I was allegedly accused of robbing. Well, I was accused of robbing. And he never told me that he knew that cat. So when I got to death row, my attorneys from Schiff Hardin Wait, Paul Dingle, and David Blickenstaff and Mary Wilson, they investigated the judge.
Yeah.
Because there was something unusual about his behavior.
Right.
And come to find out, he was an ex-Chicago police officer that knew the officer that was robbed because they would work together and they was partners from 1961 to 1965. So he knew that cat. And this is why my first conviction ever, he gave me 28 years on the armed robbery. when my attorney was expecting anywhere between 6 and 10 years. My first offense, never been arrested for a felony a day in my life.
Right.
They gave me 28 years. And not only that, after I lost those first 2 cases, because John Manning gave me the max on both cases, nobody wanted to take my case. I'd mark them because they knew what Judge Manning was doing. And it was a death penalty case. I had this guy by the name of Patrick Moriarty volunteer to take my case. And come to find out, he's also an ex-police officer who worked at the same precinct. So I'm sitting in the courtroom, talking about a kangaroo courtroom.
Yeah.
The judge knew what was going on. My attorney knew what was going on. And on top of that, my judge was one of 2 judges, sitting judges, that testified on Judge John Burris' behalf at his dismissal hearing, saying that he didn't believe that John Burris tortured anyone. And it gets better, Jim, excuse me.
Yeah.
On the day that he retired, he said that he had one regret, and that regret was that Stanley Howard was not on death row, even though he knew I was pardoned on the basis of innocence.
And you appealed to the Illinois state courts. You lost appeal, and then the Supreme Court, United States, refused to hear your case as well. So all up and down the line, this craziness continues.
Yeah.
The system was so much set up against you.
Yeah.
And so here you are. You become, I mean, talk about the irony here. You saved yourself, in a sense, by educating yourself about your own case.
Yes.
And, tell us a little about that experience and how you self-educated yourself into being this incredible jailhouse lawyer who not only helped yourself, but others in the prison setting that you were placed in.
Well, I was sent to death row in April of 1987. And I was a high school dropout. I dropped out of school in the 9th grade. I didn't want to be there because that school was placed in a neighborhood where there was nothing but gang activity. And I did not want to be at that particular school, where on death row, the courts, it is amazing. They knew what was going on. It is absolutely impossible for these same justices to see these same cops' name year after year after year and deny all these appeals continuously. Not only that, no circuit court judge has ever dismissed a John Burris torture confession. They all ruled that the confessions were voluntarily given and used at trial. And when it went to the appellate stage, none of these judges was willing to overturn any of these cases, even though they knew there's all this smoke. And these same cops, they keep seeing the same cop's name year after year.
Appointed. These judges were appointed. Is that correct?
No,
They were elected.
Appointed, and some of them were elected.
Elected.
But they all are politicians because even the ones that were appointed had to be elected eventually also. So most of them were Democrats.
Right.
And the head of the Democratic Party in our era was Richard Daley, who used to be the state's attorney. Under his regime, 55 torture victims were tortured before he became mayor. So when he became mayor and had control over the city council, the police department, the superintendent, the police board, and the investigative wing of the police department, he controlled everything, and even the politicians. So nobody wanted to go against him.
Right.
So what I did, Jim,
yeah,
as I lost my appeals, I said, you know what? These people are going to execute us if we don't do something. I started studying Islam. And one day at Talim service, a guy said to me, man, look, you got to get in school. I rebelled against it, but I got in school anyway. I took the test to find out where I was at. And the teacher said that I was ready for the GED test without even studying for it. Yeah, I took a couple of classes in Kennedy King College, about 5 months, 6 months. But I got my GED test the next month after getting my results, my TABE test results back. And I started studying criminal law. Why so? It's funny. When I was in Talim service, they started studying Arabic. And you could not read the Quran or read the Quran properly, because in order to read the Quran in its proper text, you had to understand Arabic, because some of the Arabic language could not be properly translated into English. So when they started studying Arabic, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't know English. I'm studying Arabic. So as I left Islam and started studying criminal law, and I fell in love with it. Well, I was in the cell 23, 24 hours a day, every day, for 16 years on death row. 16. But in the beginning, in the early 90s, only thing I wanted to do was study criminal law. And anything I could get my hands on.
And you eventually taught a prison-approved class on criminal. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I asked the administration, could we have an extra period? So as we will be downstairs inside this makeshift rec room, we won't be using the weights or the punching bag, or we will not be using the tables to play cards or chess. The only thing we're going down in this room for is to study and teach each other criminal law. Now, I had some of the other guys that was there also that was somewhat more advanced than me in criminal law, but we used it as a session to study criminal law. And this is where I formed the Death Row 10 at. I said after I lost my appeal, you know what? If we don't do something, these cats, they're going to execute us. They're going to sacrifice us. So I decided to take the fight outside the courtroom to the street. And that was the idea of the John Burge 10. That's what I was going to call us originally, the John Burge 10. But I figured that nobody knew who John Burge was, so I started calling us the Death Row 10. And I started writing to different people and organizations asking for help. And the campaign in the death penalty agreed to help us. And by the time that I realized that it was 12 of us and not 10, we had bought all this material and we was out as the Death Row 10. And we started protesting in front of City Hall. I made this flyer where I pieced together different tidbits on this flyer to call for the protest. And I got 100 copies of that flyer made, and I started passing it out to some of the other members who also got copies. And a large number of people showed up at their police station on September 8th, 1998. And that is what started the Death Row 10. With the help of John Parkins, Alice Kim, Marlene Martin, who was the director, and Noreen, we made a lot of noise. Eventually, these people actually caved in. And we had to go to the governor, to petition the governor to understand what was going on. And because of that, the governor pardoned 4 members of the Death Row 10 and used that as one of the reasons to clear out Death Row in 2003, saving a lot of lives.
Yeah. Stanley, a personal question. Where do you get the strength? Where do you still get the strength to carry on this incredible battle? What is in your background and your personality that, I mean, this is an unbelievable story. I mean, where do you get that? The intensity of your convictions, and I mean, so much was against you.
As a young thug criminal kid on the south side of Chicago, I had no idea about the criminal justice system, and I had no faith or anything knowledge about the death penalty. But when I got to death row, I watched 6, 7 guys prepare themselves and go to the execution. I did not want to be one of those cats. I did not want to be executed on death row. I did everything I can to teach myself about criminal law. I had a nasty run-in with an attorney who I think intentionally sabotaged my appeal, one of my appeals. And I vowed that that would not happen again. Not without me overseeing as much as I can. And I took great pride in knowing that I could help other guys. We had a beginner's course and we had a regular course, but anybody could come and we talk about the death penalty and what needs to be done. Oh, the United States Constitution is real. And I teach these guys everything evolves around the United States Constitution on this end. But the people control what happens behind these walls. And sadly, the people do not know what actually goes on with the criminal justice system and the prison system that they pay for. If we educate the public about what goes on behind these walls, they would be appalled and demand change. And that's the fight that I'm on right now and continue to be on. It is sad. They executed Murray Hooper in Arizona last year. And I wrote this piece because of this guy in South Carolina that killed his wife. His name escaped me right now, McDowell. But anyway, the judge said in his case that his family was like royalty in that courtroom. And their family had other people sentenced to death less for what he was sentenced to death for, what he was accused of. And he never even faced the death penalty. I'm like, damn, how is that even possible? And then at the same time, I was looking at that case in South Carolina. They executed Murray Hooper in Arizona. And I'm asking myself, how in the hell could you execute somebody under the system like this here where half the state believe that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president? They don't even trust their elections. How could they trust the criminal justice system to execute someone? How sad is that?
Have you been in touch with the Innocence Project at all? Did you ever contact them? Barry Scheck and did you ever work with them?
No, I have not. And I know of Barry Scheck and Peter Norfolk. I know about them in the great book that they wrote. I read that book. They do good. They do great work. To answer your question in the short form, I don't know where this passion comes from, but I am really determined to do all I can to expose what is actually going on. Yeah.
Well, now that you're out as well, you are looking to pursue this passion through working in a job, right? Paralegal position. Seems like you'd be the best possible person to be hired to do this sort of work. I mean,
before I even got my paralegal certificate, I loved teaching criminal law. I knew I was going to pass that test. I passed that test with a 98.8. It was almost like I loved it, and I put my all into it. And
Stanley, if I can, what was this love about? What made you so passionate about it? What about the study of it? Now, I'm just curious. What about discussing and studying this topic made it so important for you?
I don't know where it comes from, but I find myself up all the time thinking and working about this, even on death row. Even when I was right before I left Dixie Correctional Center, I had a bunch of guys in the day room teaching them criminal law and answering any questions that they have, hoping that it would go on. So I love this stuff. I just put an office, since I've been out, I just made me a makeshift desk over here in the corner. Well, I went to Walmart and bought a desk and a folding chair and a lamp so I could get up and study and continue the work that I was doing in prison. I don't know where it come from, but I am pursuing a career now in criminal law. I want to be a paralegal or legal assistant, or I want to work somewhere as an advocate in the criminal justice system. Anything that I could do to give back and continue to fight this system, I'm willing to do and I want to do. Why so, Jim? You are not going to F over me for 39 years, have me on death row for 16 years, let me out and think that the fight is over. No, hell no. The fight is not over. The fight is just getting good. Now that I'm out on this side of the wall, I'm going to do all that I can to expose what is going on and to help as many guys as I can. In the name of Sister Tubman, I'm trying to pull as many guys as I can from behind that hell.
Yeah.
Now, I can't go in there and grab some guys, but I damn sure could do what I can on this side of the wall. And I'm going to continue to do so.
Well, and I pledged I'm going to help you as much as I possibly can as well, and spread the word about this to some of the people that we've already had on the show that we know, like Barry Sheck and Yusuf Salam and Cornel West. So Angela Davis. I mean, this has to happen. And so tell us, you've taken this. You know, in my opening, we talked about how the penitentiary is rooted, the criminal law was rooted in the idea that they wanted people to feel penitent, to be sorry. Yet, as you've pointed out, you have righteous indignation of what the system did to you, and you've turned it into a cause. So the bitterness has become a political cause for you. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yes. I heard you say during your intro,
right,
that prisons are not designed for certain things. I am a witness that the public has turned prisons into mental health centers. Prisons are not mental health centers. So when these politicians decide to cut their budgets, decide to cut a lot of these mental health centers and clinics around this country, a lot of them cats end up in prison. And it is really bad. It's really bad. And the level of a legal assistance that these guys are getting is really bad. It's atrocious. A lot of public defenders are overworked and underpaid. There's a lot of things that needs to happen. And I like guys like Yusuf, who's reaching back, Cornel West. I like to hear Angela Davis. I like them people because they are part of a system that we need to continue to build on, the advocacy to continue to fight and expose the injustices that creeps around this nation.
Is your hope that prison one day will be abolished? And does it serve any purpose at all? Do you think, for example, the whole idea of punishing people who've been already punished so much in their lives, it gets us nowhere. James Gilligan is another person we've had on the show that I've worked with extensively, was working within the prison system, has advocated, as you've done yourself, education as the real key to solving the recidivism rate within prison. And he was the head of the prison Department of Mental Hygiene system in Massachusetts for over 20 years. He introduced a college program within the prison. Every inmate that took that program and graduated never came back to prison again. He reduced the level of violence, hostage taking, homicides, suicides to literally zero. Whereas, as you well know, people go into prison, they come out, 70% recidivism rate. It's a failed, dysfunctional system. And it's probably set up to do that because there's no real interest in incorporating many of the people that are suffering in it. So again, education becomes the key inside and outside. The public needs to be educated, and the education programs have to be offered within the system itself. And the idea of punishment is just so outdated, it's so unnecessary, yet people are still rooted in this fear-based need to condemn and to punish and to exact revenge. You see it all around the world. And it of course, the one thing we've learned is violence begets violence. So the more you punish, the more you put violence on to other people, they will react in kind. Hurt people, hurt other people.
There's a great deal of people, like I was just saying about the mental health side of it. They are not getting the help that they need. So when it's like a revolving door, when they get out and they don't get the assistance and medication that they need, then it's like back to this revolving door. And they treat mental illness as a punishment. So if a guy was having a mental meltdown, he would go to SED, and we know that solitary confinement breeds all type of irritation, aggravation, anger, stress, frustration, depression. The list goes on and on. Mutilation, it goes on and on. It's a matter of what I heard Oprah Winfrey say one day when she started coming along into understanding that some of these guys that are in prison will one day will get out. So what type of person do you want to get out? Do you want this person that's been locked up in solitary confinement for 10, 15, 20 years? Or mistreated by the system for 10, 15, 20 years? Or you want this guy who had attended programs like life skills, behavior modification, fathering, GED? But we don't have an abundance of that. The waiting list is so long. It's incredible. Do Stanley Howard believe that we should abolish prison? That is a tough question. Let's take Tony Preckwinkle, who is the county commissioner here in Cook County. She took a tour, a group of people from South Africa around the Cook County jail. And I remember her making this statement somewhere around that time, trying to explain the stupidity of what's going on. A person goes into Walmart and steals a $15 bottle of laundry soap, end up getting arrested, going to the county jail, and spend a year or more in the county jail at almost like $35, $40 a day. And the legal system that goes on around this case would cost the county thousands and thousands of dollars simply because he stole a $15 bottle of laundry soap. Now, there's some stupidity going on here. Now, we got to be more smarter on crime. We got to tackle crime on the front end and now on the back end. You can't flood the streets with guns and then be surprised that there are killings going on. Oh, people kill people and guns don't kill people. That's a bullshit. You can't sell a person some dice and arrest them for shooting dice. You can't sell a person some alcohol and arrest them for being drunk. Hey, I don't understand the logic of some of this. Some of the stuff that is going on. But what do you say with a guy who ran to the store to rob this store? What led led up to the robbery? What is his background like? What would happen if he would have had a job? Is everybody in this country who wants a job is eligible to get a job? Why is they always trying to tackle the social safety net? And then surprised when people commit petty crimes trying to feed themselves. You got homeless people out here. I mean, you say we respect our veterans. Thank you for your service. But when that veteran needs some help, you nowhere around. Oh, lock him up and throw away the key. George Bush committed so many damn murders by sending so many people in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he still is not paying for it today. Him, Condoleezza Rice, Donald Rumsfeld, all of them committed war crimes. And nobody's talking about that. We ain't talking about criminals. Because we're going to start talking about criminals, we should talk about criminals that's flooding our society with this pollution. We could go on and on about criminals. We're going to talk about blue-collar criminals. Who is the danger to our society? Woo, I'm fearing my life. Woo, no. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
You're right. It's not logical. It's not logical. It's not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm irritated. I'm so sorry that I'm irritated. I get so passionate about this subject that it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I'm sorry.
No, there's nothing to be sorry. I totally agree. I agree. It's totally frustrating. Unless you look at it this way, that the system is set up to fail, and it's set up to perpetuate the divisions and scapegoat people. It's much easier to blame people who are going through and suffering the conditions that have been created by the larger system than to look at that system as it's so corrupt and so criminalistic itself.
It's big money, Jim.
Yeah.
Money. It's money. It's a money-making machine.
Right.
It's not going to tear down this money-making machine. You got a lot of these prisons, some of these rural areas, where after prison, what they going to do? Where they going to find jobs at? Some of these rural areas don't want their prison to be closed. We want our prisoners. They got gas stations. They got hotels. They got convenience stores. They got all the stuff they need. And a lot of times, they got their hospital because they have prisons there. When the sisters come around, they got their library. They got their schools. They got the roads built. We want these prisons. So we got to keep feeding this monster. We got to keep feeding them. And where we feeding them at? A lot from these inner cities.
You know, as you're talking, we've had Yusuf on the show, and he'll be on again. Are you thinking possibly of running for office and being that political voice that can change the legislation and motivate people and mobilize people toward understanding this, what we're talking about here?
That's what I'm trying to do now with the organization that I'm trying to rekindle. It was called the Exonerated and Ex-Con for Change. Now I'm changing the name that I'm out, and I'm going to be spearheading it myself. It's going to be called the Exonerated and the Liberated for Change. And what I am trying to do, I'm trying to bring all prisoners together, as many I could get under one umbrella, who are victims of the system, and try to change legislation, try to expose what is going on. I know it's a unique endeavor, but I think I can pull it off. We would be bigger than the Chicago Police Union. We would be bigger than the Chicago Teacher Union. Only thing we have to do is come together and show that we are a voting bloc. We could have 50,000 votes here tomorrow.
Well, we got in touch with Reverend William Barber would be very interested in this as well. This is part of the Poor People's Campaign as well. Do you think that many of the so-called rehabilitation efforts by various groups around the country are also basically rooted in their desire to make money and perpetuate a certain dependency.
In part, some of these Republicans are for criminal justice reform because they think it's big business and they don't want to continue to feed a bottomless pit. So now they're trying to be smart on crime, but they're not trying to change sentence reform. And I get it. The Democrats are still scared from being tagged, being soft on crime. I get it. But it is still big business, and they still into it for the money. And Brother Youssef, I was on the panel with him when I was incarcerated, and we was fighting against the death penalty.
These groups seem to don't take this political stand that you're taking. They seem to be more concerned with perpetuating their own interests and still maintaining a certain dependency by inmates on their efforts. I could name names. You probably know who I'm talking about. They're well-meaning people, but when it comes down to it, it's still an organization. These organizations maintain ex-inmates in a dependent role.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
There are billions of dollars being funded into these programs. Yeah. And a lot of these people are getting these donations and grants in order to be able to help prisoners re-enter back into society or help prisoners in any kind of way they can. But in the end, it's still a big money business where they're drawing funding from the state and federal and local government in order to be able to supply prisoners with their needs. That's what
and private monies. Yeah. Okay. You said it. You said it much better than I did. Yes, I was dancing around there.
But in the end, Jim, it's still big money.
Yep.
That's all it's about. Now, do they do work? How much work? How much of that money is actually going towards helping prisoners? That's what I would like to see.
Right.
If you're spending 70, 80% of the money on employment, then I think something's wrong.
Would you forward me your plans for your organization? I'm really fascinated. I want to pursue this with you very, very much. Yeah. You'll send me material.
What I can do, Jim, I will send you the material that I had under the LLC for exoneration and ex-con for change. Ex-con is no longer acceptable now. So now we are forging ahead now with the exonerated and the liberated for change.
Okay, this
is the premise real quickly here.
Sure, go ahead.
Talking about criminal justice reform, don't just ask the lawyers, the judges, and the cops what need to be reformed. If you're not asking the men and women that did 10, 20, 30 years behind this wall what needs to be reformed, then you're not serious about reform.
Right.
We need to be at the table, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. And you need to have the voices of people like yourself who've seen the system from within. They have to be the leaders of this movement.
Right.
Not the so-called experts, the academics, the politicians. Exactly. We have about a minute to go. You get the last word on this, and tell us how people can get hold of you. Tell us about.
My email address is Stanley Howard 1106 at yahoo.com.
Okay.
And I would love for you to read my book called Tortured by Blue. And I should be finished with my next book within a couple of months here. It's called A Sworn True Story, How an Innocent Man Was Sentenced to Death. And
absolutely.
Plays also.
You know that your first book I did see several years ago. I think Alan, our friend Alan Stonzer, sent me a copy. So so now it is actually published, and it'll be out. Okay, let's talk about that as well. Getting you on some book events here and get that out there to be a bestseller, because it needs to be. Stanley, it's such a blessing and an honor to have you on. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so sorry of what you've been through, and yet I'm just dumbfounded. I can't believe how you've taken that incredible experience and turned it into something so beautiful and wonderful and necessary.
Mhm.
And I have all respect and honor and love for what you're doing. Thank you so very, very much.
The world has really got real speed up technology. Is like,
I know. Well, at this part of our technology, we are saying goodbye right now, and I'd love to be able to see you in person here. Hopefully, maybe you'll
okay.
come.
Hopefully we have a part 2 here, Joe. Hopefully
Yes,
part 2.
absolutely. All right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Take care, Stanley. And thank you so very, very much for watching us this week on The Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vrettos. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.